नमस्कार, स्वागत है आप सभी का हमारे इस खास कार्यक्रम में। मैं हूं आपके साथ आरेंद्र। दुनिया में शक्ति संतुलन बहुत तेजी से बदल रहा है। कहते हैं कि 21वीं सदी एशिया की होगी, जिसमें भारत के रोल को नजरअंदाज कर पाना किसी भी मुल्क के लिए बेहद मुश्किल होगा। दुनिया में सबसे तेज गति से बढ़ती अर्थव्यवस्था हिंदुस्तान की ओर आज दुनिया नजर लगाए हुए है। सबसे युवा देश भारत के पास जितनी एक समृद्ध विरासत है, उतना ही प्रभावशाली एक विकास गाथा है, और इस कहानी को आज दुनिया को बताने की जरूरत है। और शायद यही एक बड़ी वजह है कि जिसके चलते आज दुनिया भारत के साथ एक बेहतर संवाद स्थापित करना चाहती है। भारतीय नजरिए से इस संवाद को जमीन पर कैसे उतारा जाए, इस कोशिश में एक महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका निभाई है विवेकानंद इंटरनेशनल फाउंडेशन ने, और उन्होंने एक सम्मेलन का आयोजन किया है जिसका नाम है कम्युनिकेटिंग इंडिया। दिल्ली स्थित विवेकानंद इंटरनेशनल फाउंडेशन ने एक दिन का एक विशेष सम्मेलन आयोजित किया जिसका विषय था कम्युनिकेटिंग इंडिया। ये कोशिश थी कि कैसे एक देश के रूप में भारत की कहानी से दुनिया को अवगत कराया जाए। भारत के बढ़ते रोल के चलते दुनिया के साथ और बेहतर संवाद स्थापित करने का वक्त आ गया है, और इस दिशा में कैसे प्रयास करे जाएं, इस मुद्दे पर सम्मेलन में गहन मंथन हुआ। केंद्रीय सूचना एवं प्रसारण मंत्री वेंकैया नायडू ने इस सम्मेलन में भाग लेते हुए कहा कि वर्तमान केंद्र सरकार ने देश की जनता के साथ सीधा संवाद स्थापित किया है, जिसके चलते जनता और सरकार मिलकर देश की विकास गाथा लिख रहे हैं।
Today, the communication is a critical factor in the government's agenda. Its importance is not only has increased, but it has become a most important aspect of the wheel of national development. Countries on the move, nobody can deny that. The entire world is looking towards India. Through what communication, who communicated, the people of India, the development story of India has communicated, and it reached across the globe. The entire world economy is slowing down. The powerful economy of the world, China, is going a little negative. The only development story which is moving forward is India. That's a fact. That's why everybody is looking at you. And secondly, we have the latest communication is the Prime Minister Modi himself. He is a great communicator both within India, outside India. Now in the entire country there is a movement Modi going on. Modi means not Narendra Modi. Movement Modi, MODI, making of developed India. That's the momentum catching up, and everywhere people are talking about it. India is not only respected and also recognized worldwide. Now India is being visited. There is a new hunger among the younger generation, thirstiness, what do you call it in Telugu, daharti. People have that thirsty for development. They are no longer impressed by the sloganeering, by provocation, by the fundamentalist approach, or by radicalizing and all. Only few people. But the bulk of the Indian society, particularly younger generation, they are all clamoring for growth. They want development. They want to become part of the development story. So that new hunger is there. That hunger is making politicians and political parties to change their agenda. No more these freebies can carry the day politically.
इस कार्यक्रम में प्रधानमंत्री कार्यालय में राज्य मंत्री डॉक्टर जितेंद्र सिंह ने भी शिरकत की। उन्होंने कहा कि जिन देशों ने संवाद के सभी माध्यमों का भरपूर इस्तेमाल करके सफलता के प्रतिमान स्थापित किए हैं, हमें उन देशों से सीखने की जरूरत है।
That those nations or those societies which have overcome these concerns and overcome these deficits, they are the case studies for us. And they have done so because they did not leave this task to a single section, whether it was government alone, or whether it was society alone, or whether it was a section of citizenry alone. They have their bottom lines in place. Whether it's a subject of communication or journalism, the rules are already laid down. And the rules have been laid down not by imposition. They have been laid down by evolution. And in the process of that evolution, every section of society has contributed. So we are still evolving. What is gratifying is that if you compare yourself to your neighbors who started off almost simultaneously, whether it was Pakistan, whether it is Bangladesh, whether it is Sri Lanka, whether it is Myanmar, you have done commendably well.
विश्व में बदलते शक्ति संतुलन के आधार पर भारत आज एक महत्वपूर्ण स्थान हासिल कर चुका है। भारत को दुनिया के साथ अपनी सभी संभावनाओं के बेहतर इस्तेमाल के लिए किन प्रयासों को करने की जरूरत है, ये बताने की कोशिश की दुनिया के जाने माने वक्ता डॉक्टर दया थुसू ने। डॉक्टर दया थुसू लंदन स्थित यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ वेस्टमिनिस्टर में इंटरनेशनल कम्युनिकेशन के प्रोफेसर हैं, जिन्होंने संवाद की ताकत को इस्तेमाल करने पर जोर दिया।
Indian presence in international news space is almost non-existent, which is sad given that India has all the wherewithal for an international presence in the news space, which continues to be dominated by Anglo-American news organizations for reasons I don't need to explain. There are historical reasons, there are cultural reasons, there are also professional reasons. They do a pretty decent job, and they've been doing it for 150 years. But there are also new players who have emerged in the last 10 years. So the countries where the language is not English, they have an English language news channel, 24/7 news channel available around the world. India is a striking absence in that space. The Vajpayee government, which for the first time started a serious engagement with the diaspora, the whole idea of Pravasi Bharati Divas, Pravasi Bharati Samman, it all started with Mr. Vajpayee's government. And Mr. Modi has, of course, pushed it to the next level. If one was to develop a developmental discourse which is not dictated by the World Bank and delivers, and we are able to do that within a democratic setup, with all our diversity, complexities, inequalities, tensions, that would be a phenomenal case for communicating a story which will have impact across the world.
इस सम्मेलन में सबसे पहले जिस मुद्दे पर चर्चा हुई उसका विषय था टेलिंग द इंडिया स्टोरी टू द वर्ल्ड। इस विषय पर तमाम विशेषज्ञों ने अपनी राय जाहिर की।
Because the Indian diaspora globally, everywhere in the world, is considered one of the most successful. But in recent years, the transformation that is happening is visible to all. India is beginning to step up. We shied away from ASEAN. We shied away from participating in many such multilateral fora. That has changed dramatically in these last couple of decades, and especially it has sped up in the last few years. We are actively seeking to engage in not just ASEAN or even APEC, which is much farther up. We are seeking to engage in SCO. We are seeking to engage in many different multilateral fora. We have also transitioned during this period from a country that is primarily an aid receiver to an aid giver.
Now, I would say that India's image on the whole is a mixed one. There are many positives and many negatives too. Positives at the popular level are the usual ones: old civilization, friendly people, the splendor of the Maharajas, the land of Gandhi, dance and music, art, the arts, rich culture, colorful people, temples, festivals, great touristic sites, yoga, Kerala massages, Bollywood, democracy, talented people, strong in mathematics, prowess in the IT sector, growing economy, future global power, and of course our successful diaspora contributes to this positive image. And sometimes our story gets heard on its own. We don't have to make an effort. Our Mars mission, for example, did enormously in terms of improving our image as a technological power. The fact that we launched 104 satellites tells its own story. The fact that Indians are at the head of the US internet giants actually tells a very powerful story. But then our poor show in the Olympics tells a different story.
That there is a foundational element to the India story. And that is an extremely important story that many in the world do recognize, which we need to constantly reinforce, which is that we are the world's only rising democracy in the developing world. There is no parallel. There is simply no parallel of a country that is built on the principle of unity and diversity, And it is an extremely important principle in today's world where the question of diversity is dividing Western societies. Forget about the rest of the world. The idea of diversity, and not just religious diversity, linguistic diversity, ethnic diversity, regional diversity, this subcontinent was called a subcontinent because it is a subcontinent. And as a subcontinent, it accepted a democratic constitution. And within the framework of a democratic constitution, we have performed. India is a rising economy. It's a rising power. Its people are increasingly making an impact on the outside world. So it's a success story. And therefore, and it's a success story built within the framework of a pluralistic democracy. This is the India story. One doesn't have to spend too much time looking for what is the India story. The question is, are we communicating it? I think the real challenge, Professor Tusu also mentioned, is not what is the India story, but how do we tell the India story?
When we come down to saying what is the vision, what is it that conjures up in the mind of the consumer when they think of your country? When they think of China, it's cheap manufacturing. When they think of Japan, it's discipline and engineering. When they think of Thailand, it's entertainment and tourism. That is what is the first thought that comes to your mind. What comes to your mind when you think of India? At this point of time, I don't know whether there's anything positive. It's all negative. I mean, if you talk about the average consumer. So I am looking at it of promoting India not just to a target group of industrialists or a government. What is the world going to think about India becomes extremely important as far as I'm concerned. You've got confusion going on in the United States. You've got confusion in Europe. You've got confusion in UK. China is on a slow level. We miss this in the next 1 to 2 years. Forget about developing a brand. I mean, apart from whatever you've said that we don't have a good TV stage, we need to have all that. But I'm just adding rather than repeating that this is it. Think of one single focal point that we can own before somebody else takes that away from us.
Unless we have this cooperative effort of getting people to come in India and see India and Indians as a friendly country, as a country which has absorbed all these religions and all these cultures, and yet has its own syncretic national identity, I'm afraid the work is not done. I mean, more tourists visit China in a fortnight than they come to India over a year. Why? Because we have not built an atmosphere of being a welcoming people. And the best way to that is, please use your heritage. I think Mr. Modi has done it in Gujarat about the write-ups of Buddhism in Gujarat. We can become a tourism hub for our entire neighborhood, and the West will come in. We do have our spiritual, historical strengths, which in a modern society you exploit. We don't. And we should think about it. Our entire eastern neighborhood is Buddhist.
तो अभी तक आपने देखा कि आखिर जरूरत क्यों है कि भारत की इस कहानी को दुनिया को बताया जाए। फिलहाल एक छोटे से ब्रेक के लिए रुकेंगे, लेकिन ब्रेक के उस पार जब वापस आएंगे तो आपको बताएंगे कि भारत की इस कहानी को दुनिया से रूबरू कराने के लिए कौन से वो महत्वपूर्ण आयाम हैं जिनके साथ इस कोशिश को जमीन पे उतारा जाएगा। फिलहाल एक छोटे से ब्रेक के लिए रुकते हैं।
किसान भाइयों गांठ बांध लो, बात बहुत है काम की, समृद्धि के पैगाम की। मिट्टी की तुम जांच कराओ, मुफ्त सॉइल हेल्थ कार्ड ले जाओ, कभी मुनासिब बीज लगाओ, सही किस्म की खाद ले आओ, जितनी जरूरी उतनी डालो, सही मात्रा खुद पहचानो। किसान भाइयों गांठ बांध लो,
आज ही मिट्टी की जांच कराएं, राज्य सरकार के कृषि अधिकारी से संपर्क करें और मुफ्त में सॉइल हेल्थ कार्ड पाएं। कृषि और किसान कल्याण मंत्रालय द्वारा किसान हित में जारी।
प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना ने हम गांव वालों के लिए तरक्की के रास्ते खोल दिए।
सड़क के गड्ढों की फोटो खींच रहे हो, कोई खास बात है क्या? अरे काका, मेरे मोबाइल फोन में मेरी सड़क ऐप है, जिससे प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क से जुड़ी कोई भी जानकारी सरकार तक भेजी जा सकती है। सड़क से जुड़े सुझाव या शिकायत पर सरकार वाजिब कार्यवाही करती है।
प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क से जुड़ी कोई भी बात, मेरी सड़क एंड्रॉइड ऐप अब हर पल मेरे साथ। किसान भाइयों गांठ बांध लो, बात बहुत है काम की, समृद्धि के पैगाम की। मिट्टी की तुम जांच कराओ, मुफ्त सॉइल हेल्थ कार्ड ले जाओ। कभी मुनासिब बीज लगाओ, सही किस्म की खाद ले आओ। जितनी जरूरी उतनी डालो, सही मात्रा खुद पहचानो। किसान भाइयों गांठ बांध लो।
आज ही मिट्टी की जांच कराएं। राज्य सरकार के कृषि अधिकारी से संपर्क करें और मुफ्त में सॉइल हेल्थ कार्ड पाएं। कृषि और किसान कल्याण मंत्रालय द्वारा किसान हित में जारी।
अब मैं अपने लाइफ की सबसे बड़ी मूवमेंट लीड करने जा रहा हूँ, जो इंडिया के लिए बहुत जरूरी है। आपको खड़ा होना पड़ेगा मेरे साथ, टीम स्वच्छ भारत मिशन का हिस्सा बनकर, और हम सब मिलकर एक ऐसा इंडिया बनाएंगे जहाँ हर कोई टॉयलेट यूज करता हो, क्योंकि जब सब टॉयलेट यूज करेंगे तो सब प्रोग्रेस करेंगे।
किसान भाइयों गांठ बांध लो, बात बहुत है काम की, समृद्धि के पैगाम की। मिट्टी की तुम जांच कराओ, मुफ्त सॉइल हेल्थ कार्ड ले जाओ। कभी मुनासिब बीज लगाओ, सही किस्म की खाद ले आओ। जितनी जरूरी उतनी डालो, सही मात्रा खुद पहचानो। किसान भाइयों गांठ बांध लो।
आज ही मिट्टी की जांच कराएं। राज्य सरकार के कृषि अधिकारी से संपर्क करें और मुफ्त में सॉइल हेल्थ कार्ड पाएं। कृषि और किसान कल्याण मंत्रालय द्वारा किसान हित में जारी।
प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना ने हम गांव वालों के लिए तरक्की के रास्ते खोल दिए।
सड़क के गड्ढों की फोटो खींच रहे हो, कोई खास बात है क्या? अरे काका, मेरे मोबाइल फोन में मेरी सड़क ऐप है, जिससे प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क से जुड़ी कोई भी जानकारी सरकार तक भेजी जा सकती है। सड़क से जुड़े सुझाव या शिकायत पर सरकार वाजिब कार्यवाही करती है।
प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क से जुड़ी कोई भी बात, मेरी सड़क एंड्रॉइड ऐप अब हर पल मेरे साथ।
किसान भाइयों गांठ बांध लो, बात बहुत है काम की, समृद्धि के पैगाम की। मिट्टी की तुम जांच कराओ, मुफ्त सॉइल हेल्थ कार्ड ले जाओ। कभी मुनासिब बीज लगाओ, सही किस्म की खाद ले आओ। जितनी जरूरी उतनी डालो, सही मात्रा खुद पहचानो। किसान भाइयों गांठ बांध लो।
आज ही मिट्टी की जांच कराएं। राज्य सरकार के कृषि अधिकारी से संपर्क करें और मुफ्त में सॉइल हेल्थ कार्ड पाएं। कृषि और किसान कल्याण मंत्रालय द्वारा किसान हित में जारी।
जैसे सूट टाइप, यू नो, मुझे ये ग्रीन या फिर ब्राउन। ठीक है, आप ये पैक कर दीजिए। सेब कितने का दिया? बच्ची को संतरा ही पसंद है, यही दे दीजिए। अगर आप माँ बनने वाली हैं, तो HIV टेस्ट जरूर करवाएं। बच्चे को HIV से बचाने के लिए जल्द ही पता लगाना और वक्त पे दवाई दिलवाना जरूरी है।
करें वही जो बच्चे के लिए हो सके।
हर सरकारी अस्पताल के ICTC में HIV की जांच एवं सलाह मुफ्त और गोपनीय है।
और ब्रेक के बाद आपका स्वागत है इस खास कार्यक्रम में। और अब हम बात करेंगे आखिर कैसे भारत की इस कहानी को अगर दुनिया तक पहुंचाना है तो उसकी आयाम क्या कुछ होंगे। पत्रकारिता एक बहुत बड़ा माध्यम है, क्योंकि अगर विश्व मीडिया की बात की जाए तो भारत की मौजूदगी बेहद कम नजर आती है। कैसे भारत की मीडिया की विश्व के पटल पे मौजूदगी बढ़ाई जा सके, इस बारे में आगे विचार होगा। साथ ही साथ ये भी कि कैसे भारतीय प्रवासी इस दिशा में एक बड़े रोल को निभा सकते हैं। आइए देखते हैं क्या वो चीज़ें हैं जिसके चलते भारत की कहानी को दुनिया तक बताने के लिए ये सारे आयाम मददगार साबित होने वाले हैं। विवेकानंद इंटरनेशनल फाउंडेशन के इस सम्मेलन में जिस दूसरे विषय पर चर्चा हुई उसका नाम था डायलॉग विद डायस्पोरा।
We also need to figure out what exactly are we wanting to communicate. If you are trying to communicate basics about India as it is today, about rising India's the government's initiatives, the government's programs, policies, you really don't need to put in much effort. It's all out there on the net. And unlike India, most of the world is actually on the net. And if they are interested, they will find out. Now, the point is, how do you generate that interest? How do you sort of guide them into finding out what's happening here, what what the new India is all about, the new India Prime Minister Modi talks about. What really is that new India about? It's not only about India's GDP or its economy. It's not only about the new opportunities of investment that are coming up. It's also about the cultural regeneration of India.
Diaspora strength, nobody doubts. It was there earlier, but now it is tremendous. I remember when we used to go to US earlier, every Indian used to be looked upon as an economic migrant. Now, even an economic migrant is known as an IT engineer. We were at G8 Summit, and my driver happened to be a Swiss. He asked me, "Are you from India?" I said, "Yes." "Do you have starvation deaths?" I said, "Yes." "Do you have hunger?" "Yes." "Malnutrition?" "Yes." All the ills of the Indian society inherited. Then he suddenly dropped a bombshell. "Then how come you have become an IT superpower?" I said, "How do you know we are an IT superpower?" He said, "Every third Indian here is an IT expert, even in Switzerland." So the kind of diaspora strength we have evolved over the years were not being harnessed. And now I'll come to the concluding point which I want to make is, which totally with an eye on the Indian voters. So our diaspora is a big constituency in many countries. You were mentioning only about Canada, even in UK, in US.
दुनिया के साथ भारत के संवाद को स्थापित करने में पत्रकारिता का कैसे भरपूर उपयोग हो सके, इस विषय पर भी इस सम्मेलन में चर्चा हुई। इस सत्र में भी देश के जाने माने लोग शामिल हुए। इनका जोर इस बात पर था कि कैसे विश्व मीडिया में भारतीय नजरिए की मौजूदगी को बढ़ाया जा सके।
Prime Minister Modi has 13 million people. Just for context, Mr. Trump's official Facebook page has 1/10. So PM Modi has 13 million and President Trump has 1.4 million on Facebook. On a personal page, which is different from Prime Minister's page, Mr. Modi has 40 million, which means 3 times of the Prime Minister's page is on Prime Minister Modi's page, which also talks a little bit about this generation and their feeling of connectiveness. They don't connect that well to institution. Narendra Modi's Twitter handle has 28.7 million followers. 28.7 million. Trump, 1 million less. So we're good to go. We don't just have number, but we also put sense. So that way we are much better off. PMO, 17 million. And POTUS, 16 million. So it shows that we are no pushovers if it really is about chasing numbers, discourses, formats, conviction that really matters.
The media has expanded enormously. There are literally hundreds of channels, websites, and so on and so forth. So the same talent pool, which in earlier time was divided among, say, 10 to 15 big newspapers, is now split over literally hundreds of websites, newspapers, television channels, and so on. So this has told on the sheer availability of talent per unit, per outlet. And other than 1 or 2 big major newspapers, most channels, most websites seem to be essentially one-man shows, riding one talented individual, one editor, one iconic reporter, and pretty much nothing else. It's almost like a one-man party.
Media remains relevant, will continue to remain relevant, especially traditional media that continues to have relevance with the ordinary Indian. But he picks up the newspaper the next morning, but he's reading the story with a sense of confidence. And he's reading that newspaper with several things that go into it, whether it be in terms of education, whether it be in terms of aspiration, whether it be in terms of a lifestyle, whether it be in terms of health, in terms of technology. The newspaper continues to be your best package that delivers every one of these at 3 rupees at your doorstep every morning. It is unbeatable anywhere in the world.
What is journalism after all? I mean, there are facts, figures, opinions, a dime a dozen. In fact, it's an overload of information that is there. What does a newspaper or a traditional media house or a traditional media outlet do? That it interprets and puts it in context for its reader or its viewer. That should be the job of the traditional media. Because on the social media is like the old barber shop, where you went for a haircut and you heard gossip from the barber as well as the people sitting in the customers sitting in the barber shop. That is social media for me even today, because I will not be able to verify facts from a distance if somebody has put out something from Syria or somewhere from Sarajevo. But I expect the traditional media to give me that interpretation and give me the truth as it sees it. But I have a problem with the traditional media, especially the media located in our cities, and especially the English language media, is that it is too focused in and around Delhi, in and around Mumbai, in and around Kolkata, rather than looking at the villages and the semi-urban areas that India is made up of.
And the vision is to be a globally respected digital news platform advocating Indian national interest. Like what Ashok Malik was saying, that it's not going to be one of those typical television outfits. It will be a digital outfit. He's absolutely right. And then the mission is to report on international news to a global digital audience with an Indian perspective, present India's point of view and perspective on global events as they unfold through a select panel of columnists and commentators, challenge the anti-India narrative in foreign media through hard and compelling commentary, create a mind space for India's strategic interventions within key opinion makers abroad from a geopolitics and global economy standpoint, tell the India story to a global audience, and to emerge as India's top digital news brand with an international focus. Before I go on to other things, let me also say this in respect of what Ashok was saying and Professor Dayatasu. It is recommended that the proposed digital platform be created through an appropriate corporate structure under the Companies Act 2013 that will ensure both financial autonomy and global competitiveness. It is also recommended that the oversight and accountability of the proposed digital platform be ensured through relevant provisions of corporate governance as required by the Companies Act 2013. That we must have such a digital platform which will look at the world through Indian eyes, and then we will have our own take on what goes on in the world, whether in the US or other Western nations or so on. And I do think that is doable. I also believe that this is a moment when I think India has arrived there in order to find its space among the top media brands in the world.
तो देखा आपने, विवेकानंद इंटरनेशनल फाउंडेशन की एक सार्थक कोशिश थी। दिन भर की मंथन के बाद में जो वैचारिक निचोड़ निकला है, उसके साथ नीति निर्माताओं को तो अवगत कराया ही जाएगा, साथ ही साथ आम लोगों को भी जोड़ा जाएगा। कोशिश यही होगी कि भारत की कहानी को कैसे बेहतर तरीके से दुनिया को बताया जा सके। इस कोशिश में भारतीय भौगोलिक सीमा में रहने वाले लोग तो अपना योगदान देंगे ही, साथ ही साथ प्रवासी भारतीयों का भी रोल काफी अहम है। तब जाके शायद दुनिया भारत के इस वास्तविक रोल को समझ पाएगी और सच्चाइयों से रूबरू हो पाएगी। तो इस विशेष कार्यक्रम में आज बस इतना ही। नमस्कार।